Elizabeth. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you at the 11 ICG in Seoul. Here we celebrate your tremendous time in our geosynthetics industry and acknowledge your transition to a new job and career direction. I know you have served in a unique role in our industry, connecting participants and contributing to information sharing and market growth. So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And I must say it is a very big honor for me to be able today here at the 11 ICG to ask you a few questions.
Thank you for taking the time to find out what I think. It's appreciated.
So I would like to start just from the beginning.
Sure.
So I wonder what was your first involvement with the geosynthetics and what originally inspired you to enter in the industry?
Well, good question. Probably a lot of people know that my father-in-law is related to this industry very heavily. And he approached me 18 years ago with a little dilemma. Communication. He understood that the industry was doing some fantastic things, but he was frustrated by the concept that the industry knew how to do things well, prevent failures, and he was having a hard time understanding why failures were still occurring. And it boiled down to information distribution. The smart people inside of the industry weren't able to get the information out to the consumers of the products and the design methodologies and things of that nature. So he had the idea to maybe use this thing called the internet. He said, "Wait, what do you think? You think we could share some information that way?" And it started as a kind of a weekend project for about 8 months, and then I quit what was then my job, and we got serious about Geosynthetica.
Oh,
That's it.
fantastic! Fantastic. So about information, so Geosynthetic is your baby, right? So it's a well-known industry, Geosynthetics online new magazine and information resource. This has been your own idea, your baby, and you have grown this prominence in the industry, actually. Can you please comment on the nature of the geosynthetic news sharing process and how this is important to our industry?
Well, as I pointed out, the dilemma existed initially, and we've just kind of grown with it. Obviously, digital communication has evolved, and the biggest problem that we have, I think, in this industry remains the same problem. It's gotten better, but the work at the IGS, the work at Geosynthetica, the work at Minerva that I've done, all address the same issue, which is communication. There's such a huge body of great work in this industry, and without communication, it just doesn't get to the people who can leverage that to do great things. Natalie's talk yesterday addressed how many facets of the environmental concerns can be addressed by geosynthetics, but at one point we joked around about getting t-shirts that said geo what, because we went to an engineering conference, and when we used that terminology, people were unfamiliar, which was a clear sign. Engineers were unfamiliar, clear sign, and we needed to do more talking. So, that's the core issue. Don't be afraid to promote, discuss, and leverage, all of the various available media resources to get the word out, let people know what geosynthetics can do.
Yeah.
Sounds simple. Very straightforward.
Yeah, and from your point of view, so you mentioned Minerva, right? Mm-hmm. And from your unique vantage point at Minerva, can you share with us what you think about the status of the global geosynthetic industry, and especially what can be the new steps and if any need to be taken to achieve to continued growth?
Yeah, the ongoing conferences that are held annually in many countries and this is the big international conference every 4 years, prove there are literally hundreds of papers given. There are hundreds of journal articles written every year, and there was an overwhelming response to the IGS awards, which are technical awards given for innovation. And that proves again that we know how to solve problems. That the associations that exist, the International Geosynthetic Society, interacting with other organizations, publications like Geosynthetica, cross-pollinating through discussions with Geostrata and other international publications, just to communicate, work together, and understand how these technologies can be leveraged to solve problems. It's kind of the same. I kind of have the same story over and over again, but it's what I really believe to be the truth, and we've seen the impact of that as we've worked with other organizations and moved forward. And the IGS is a very well-respected group in the other engineering associations, and we just have to keep sort of telling the story and pushing it forward. The reason I think that I had the pleasure of being so successful in this group was because my background is in communications and marketing and not engineering. And there's a lot of job security when you're a communications person around engineers. There just is. There are all these great minds that go off and they're hyper-focused on building solutions. They're not hyper-focused on communicating them. And it's an ecosystem. You know, you need to make sure that all the pieces are there for everything to keep working well. And so people that have been stuck in IGS meetings with me will be hearing this story again and again, but you have to tell your story. You have to communicate your technology.
Yeah, so nice. And so communication, I see, is a very key point for you. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering what would be your message then to the young professional that work in our discipline.
Yeah, coming to these events, writing papers, harnessing technology to tell the story. I think I know I was so intimidated at my first Geosynthetics conference. I can hardly remember it because I was just so overwhelmed by all of the things that were going on. But just jump into the community, be a part of it, and your young members. In fairness, Laura is the head of the Young Members Committee for the IGS, and they're a great example of how they have globally translated communications, worked on engaging young members, and don't be intimidated by your senior members of the community who are well established. They embrace all of the new stuff that's going on, and so broken record, communicate. And look for opportunities, I think, to apply your solutions in novel ways. Just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean that it can't be done moving forward. And there's an enormous amount of support when folks are interested in coming up with creative solutions. And engineers, again, tend to be conservative with change. They're big stakes, but look for ways to apply the technology to new solutions, or create new solutions with the technology that exists, I guess.
So Elizabeth, who would you like to share with us what is, during these 18 years of career in the industry, the funniest anecdote you will bring with you?
I'm not sure if it's the funnest, but there is something that I think is really poignant, and I didn't really realize the impacts at the time that it happened, but looking back now, it was at a GRI event in Las Vegas, one of my very first Geosynthetics events. And I was just getting to know everybody. Great place to be because the old GRI events were the very core of the geosynthetics community, all of the people who were very focused on geosynthetics. And it was a big group of engineers, and there was this one sort of crazy guy wearing a black leather vest, didn't fit in, Dean Sandry, who had spent some time at Mirify and had moved into the wall business. And I remember he gave me this big handshake, and he essentially asked me what my intentions were with the industry. What is this, communication thing that you're trying to do? And he looked at me and he said, Elizabeth, you know what our problem is? Geosynthetics aren't sexy. And I thought, well, yeah, of course, I sort of walked away thinking, interesting perspective, but it wasn't until much later that I realized the impact that has on our industry. And years later, I was invited to the opening of the EVOH, the nano production line. I'm stumbling on my words. I went to Karari when they were opening a research line, and the story was told to me that EVOH was developed to solve a problem for Nike so that they could keep the air bubble in the shoes. It took 2 decades for anybody to realize that EVOH could potentially stop the transmission of VOCs into groundwater. And the Kerners and quite a few people worked hard to get research money to try and figure out how we could leverage that technology. So essentially, tennis shoes are very sexy. They got millions of dollars of funding to solve a problem. We're struggling to solve groundwater issues, and we can hardly do it. And it's because we are not appealing to the masses. We're not sexy. And that drives back to communication. It's still a communication problem. It's a different communication problem, but nobody's going to tell the story and get people investing either financially or with interest to the technology and the solutions that Geosynthetics offers if we don't tell our own story, and we have to make that story sexy. And Natalie talked about that, our very important role in the global community, but we have to tell that story. So all the way back to communications, we need more funding. We need to stop working in a low margin industry that's undervalued. And the only way that we can really achieve that is to work through the IGS, to work through Geosynthetica, to work through all of those vehicles to get the public aware of the importance of these technologies. That's my soapbox that I've been on for the last 18 years. But it drills back to that very difficult problem that we have, that we're not the focus of everybody's attention. But we're not going to be the focus of everybody's attention unless we tell the story. Jean-Louis also yesterday in the barrier session mentioned that Solmax was not giving away, but they were subsidizing white geomembrane into the marketplace, trying to encourage the use of a product that they believe is technologically better than black geomembrane in certain applications, and they still can't affect change because of the perception of it's just a piece of plastic in the ground. It'll be fine. So there are lots and lots of anecdotes to support that dilemma that we have. And I think you asked earlier, how can we move things forward? And I said communication, and that's another point of communication that we really have to emphasize. And sometimes as academics and engineers, there's a perception that marketing is beneath us or somehow or another not even, maybe, I don't even want to say ethical, but somehow marketing is dirty. It's not. It's our job to market ourselves. We're doing good stuff. The world needs to know that we're doing good stuff. So, yeah, that's it.
You should know something to appreciate it, right?
Right,
So.
right. I'm not telling anybody to tell lies. I'm just saying, you know, make yourself look sexy. Be appealing to the world. And then hopefully it will earn us the kind of funding and the kind of recognition that will support the improved development of these technologies. Yeah. But it has to come from within. It's not, nobody else is going to carry that story. Nobody else is going to make us sexy. So thanks, Dean, for that little bit of advice. I'm sorry that I underappreciated it in the beginning. Yeah.
Okay, it sounds a very big responsibility for us. Okay, so Elizabeth, I would really like to thank you for your service in the industry in this long year, and may we expect to see you sometimes in the future?
I am moving on at the time to, spend more time with my family and take care of some things, but I'm not dead. I'll be around.
This is what I wanted to hear. Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Take care.